Hello, I'm Brent Hite, and welcome back to Brent Hite Outdoors. Recently, I was interviewed by the Doug and Dave Intel Report, and the topic that we chose to talk on was CERN. CERN is a particle collider that's located in Geneva, Switzerland. There's some interesting and eerie things going on with this collider. So if you'd like to learn more about this, stay with me, and we'll fade into the interview.
Hodges here, host of the Common Sense Show.tv. Thank you so much for joining us. You can see that we have Brent Hite, from Outdoors, and he's returned to very kindly talk to us about CERN right here on the Doug and Dave Intel Report. You see my broadcast partner there, Doug Thornton, and you don't want to get in an arm wrestling match with him, but other than that, he's just a real nice guy. But we're going to talk about something I think is really important and not very well understood, and that's CERN. And I hear all these rumors. I hear satanic rumors, teleportation rumors. And listen, I'm going to be learning right along with you guys because we have someone who knows quite a bit about this, Brent Hite. I'm so glad we can do this show because I think this is probably of major stuff. This is probably the least understood.
Thanks for having me back on.
Our pleasure.
And Doug, you too.
Thanks for being on, Brent.
Well, Brent, where do we start with this inquiry? Let's start with why it was built, why they said they built it, and why you think they built it. I bet it's not the same thing.
Yeah, you know, this whole concept started way back. We've mentioned this is CERN. CERN is an acronym that and my French is not that good, but it's French words that mean the Organization for Nuclear Research. So that's what this started out to be, and the concept was brought up at about 1951. It actually became a reality in 1952, and so we're just now being concerned about CERN, but this thing's been in existence for over 70 years. So one thing I want to say that a lot of people don't realize what CERN is, but a lot of people don't realize that the World Wide Web came from CERN. Also, they created the World Wide Web in order to share information among different countries. There's 185 countries that have contributed money to this project over the years, and I think I looked up the other day, I think there's about 205 countries in the world. And so, a vast majority of them have contributed money to this. This means people's tax dollars have been dedicated to this project from all over the world. So why did they create this, or why did they start this? It was to study the unknown. It was to study stuff on the nuclear level. And then it ends up that they start colliding protons and neutrons, and it's particle physics is what it is. It's a study of particle physics.
Okay. That's interesting about the internet, because I thought I had learned that the internet was developed by the Army as an alternative form of communication in case of a nuclear attack.
They're not the sole creators of the World Wide Web, but a big portion of the World Wide Web came from the interest in sharing this information among countries.
Okay.
So currently, what implications are there for CERN that we should be concerned about?
Let's see, where do we start? First of all, this is a European startup project that's gone global, and so they openly admit that there's the possibility that they can open up other dimensions. I mean, this is something that's openly discussed even on their YouTube channel, and there's a need for them to recreate the Big Bang is what they're trying to do with this thing. They want to recreate the Big Bang because they believe that the Big Bang happened and that's what created the universe. And so they believe if they can recreate that, then they can better understand matter and different particles and how the universe is made up.
So to your knowledge, with recreating the Big Bang, obviously it has that huge pipe that goes in what? Is it a mile or more than a mile
It's
in
actually
circumference?
the
15
largest
miles?
the largest one is actually 27 kilometers, which is roughly 17 miles, and it's underground. And the reason why it's underground, it's 400 feet underground to be exact. And there's two main reasons why it's underground. One of it is the cooling factor, because this thing generates nearly 14 tera electron volts electricity, which is the most electricity that's ever been used in any machine known to man. And so this is a massive amount of electricity, so it takes a lot of cooling, and being underground helps it cool. The other reason why it is underground is they take advantage of the ground current. We have current that runs through our Earth, and it enters the Earth through different magnetic points coming from the North and South Pole. We have connection points on the Earth. But the thing that they can really take advantage of, and this gets into talking about the sun, but when the sun throws a solar flare, it's called a coronal mass ejection, a CME. This solar flare is actually an electrically charged plasma filament. And when this filament releases, it's not always Earth facing, but when it is, we have instruments out in space that can tell us if we are going to get an Earth facing blow from this coronal mass ejection. This coronal mass ejection is made up of electrically charged plasma particles, and it hits the Earth's atmosphere at an enormous speed. And when it does, it supercharges the poles and makes the ground current maybe 10, 12, 20 times stronger than normal. So since we have satellites that can detect when this is going to happen and predict when it happens, it's beneficial for the people at CERN to turn on their magnetic instruments that they have that forces the protons through the underground tunnels, and at a precise time they can get a supercharge by the sun hitting the sun's solar flare hitting the Earth, because it makes the ground current that much stronger. Now, a negative of that is, as it is, when you're running 14 tera electron volts, or almost that, you've got a current you create a magnetic field. The magnetic field is actually 100,000 times stronger than our Earth's own magnetic field. So when you crank this thing up and you take advantage of that solar flare supercharging the ground current, then you've got a power generation that can actually pull in or implode our magnetic shield around the Earth. And when that happens, then you create a hole, and you allow radiation to come in, harmful radiation to come in on the Earth. And so that is why some people believe that whether they're doing it directly or not, this could lead to weather modification and or possibly earthquakes.
Do you think the underground need for this is based off of Nikola Tesla? Has anyone ever came out with that? You know, Nikola Tesla had the ability to transfer energy underground from one transmission station to another. Does CERN have a capability like that, or was it based off that in any loose way?
Yeah, I think so, because um, there's several pictures you can pull up on the internet, and there on the site there is a dome much like what the Tesla Tower was. It's shaped much like that. So I think they're using some of that technology, and I think they probably got some of their ideas from his research.
Like the question I have, if they can open up dimensional portals, can they use it to transport as well?
Well,
Humans, inanimate objects?
I think that's something that they want to explore. Um, you know, they discuss, and when I say they, CERN has a website, and they have you can actually monitor when they're operating and watch their meetings, and they even have a YouTube channel. And so they talk about the possibility of a parallel universe or parallel reality, and whether or not that we can actually teleport or tap into or open up other dimensions that are running parallel to ours. Some of this may seem like science fiction, but they're actually experimenting. I mean, we got 185 countries donating money to this project. This is the biggest machine ever built known to man that we know of. There may have been something in another time. The book of Ecclesiastes tells us there's nothing new under the sun. So something, to me, this kind of reminds me of a modern day Tower of Babel.
How was that?
I think that's pretty good. I agree with that too.
It's just that whatever Babel was something that God didn't want, and the people had become too knowledgeable. They got a little bit big for their britches, so to speak, and God put a stop to it. And to me, it seems like we are experimenting and messing with things that we should not mess with. They discuss dark matter. Some people think that it's a possibility. We're using enough power in this thing. It's a possibility that we could create a black hole, which wouldn't be good because we could get sucked right into it. A black hole can suck in light. So the mass of the earth would be nothing to be pulled through a black hole. Some people claim or theorize that it's a possibility that by using this much power that we could create a black hole and endanger ourselves.
One of the things that I've read about Einstein's, I think, Rosen bridge theory is that if you open up a portal to a different dimension, you can actually, it's like pulling up the rug in time space. And if you were to go into it, let's say in a craft, you could actually come out the other side of your universe by duplicating the process where you're at, kind of like a Stargate in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Has there already been any discussion of that?
I've heard discussion of Stargates. There was a movie Stargate, and it's really similar in looks to what this picture is behind me.
I agree.
So, I'm sure they're experimenting with the possibilities. Back years ago, we experimented with things that gives us the modern things we have now, like cell phones and televisions and computers. And I think this is something that they're experimenting with now that's going to either give us new instruments in the future, or it'll bring to our destruction. That's another thing. At this facility is actually in Geneva, Switzerland, just west of Geneva, Switzerland, and part of the big loop that we talked about, the 17-mile loop, part of it's in France, and part of it's in Switzerland. And so the significant thing about this is they built this site on the former location of the Temple of Apollo. Now, why did they do that? I don't know, but some of their, like when they do their magnet change, I've watched them go through 3 or 4 magnet changes, and what they're doing is they're upgrading so they can move things faster, and these magnets help them move things at a faster pace. This thing's operating when these particles collide, they're colliding almost at the speed of light, not quite, but almost. And so they've upgraded these magnets several times in order to accomplish the speed. And when they get ready to reopen, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 years for this magnet upgrade to take place. And when they get ready to open up again, sometimes they have like a ritualistic pagan type dance performance that goes on before this.
Okay,
And
we know where this comes from. Let me go biblical on you for just a moment.
Okay, let's go.
If you were to believe that Satan's goal is to destroy humanity, and he wanted to get the soul, but he couldn't, then CERN might be the device that does it. Enact a black hole, poof, humanity's gone. Big middle finger to the Lord and his prized creation.
And I failed to mention, not only did they build this on the ancient site of the Temple of Apollo, but also they put a statue of the god of destruction, which is Shiva. It's a Hindu god. They put a statue, and Shiva is said to dance between the portals. Well, this statue is the picture of the god Shiva, and it's actually dancing in a fiery portal on this. So I think there's paganistic elements involved in this, and I've even asked the question: is this how they are going to? Is this the key to open the bottomless pit? Are they going to be able? There's even been some talk that the last time before the last magnet change that they actually there's been people admitted that they did open a portal and they could see entities on the other side. Now, how true that is, I don't know. That's rumor that I've picked up on the internet. But um, the fact that they are experimenting and they are actually talking openly about the possibility of opening other dimensions, certainly could lend itself to the fact this is something demonic.
Yeah, one of the conspiracy theories is that um, CERN could actually shift the world into an alternate timeline by creating these microscopic black holes, and I guess sending Earth through that, putting us in another timeline, or while in the void, we would actually be in another dimension.
And there never would have been a Jesus.
Right. So that could erase the fact that we had a savior. There's a lot of focus on dark matter is what they study a lot on this. I don't know exactly what they're trying to do with this dark matter, but they have discovered that it exists and they've given it a name. Excuse me. And they've even discovered a new particle that they actually dubbed the God particle. So
Higgs boson.
yeah, right. So, um, so what are they considering the God? Is that the God that of the Bible, or is this their God? What are they trying to prove with this? And why would so many governments of the world agree to contribute to this project is one question I have. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Same thing. Same thing. Doug,
I
what
have
do
a
you think?
I have a theory on this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
According to what we used to be able to do back in the Bible with opening up portals, obviously there's plenty of different references in Scripture telling you not to do stuff like that.
Right.
I think we have lost this innate ability or art. Is one crazy thing that I read, and also this has to do with sorcery, witchcraft, stuff like this. So they called it art in this article, and the ability to open up portals through necromancy and all this other stuff, we've lost that. So hence what's behind you
Mm-hmm.
takes such a large amount of technology to recreate what beings used to be able to do, or people who had the ability to contact these beings used to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Scientifically, it kind of makes sense that it would take this much infrastructure and technology to recreate something without going paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that the Nazis were able to do this through necromancy. We know that in the Bible it says don't do necromancy. So necromancy was a real big issue, especially for thousands of years. So, and it seems like with this, CERN just grew and grew and grew in the immensity of the project. They had originally it was over here in Texas, and then over there in Switzerland. They got one that's in China. I think that's the Small Hadron Collider. And I don't know who it is, but there's a proposal to build like a 30-mile in circumference Hadron Collider. It's like the Super Hadron Collider or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
To me, and this is just, my surmise of this, eventually we're going to have a big mistake. That's the scientific method. Is
Both of you have said that now. Both of you have said that.
You're going to push the experiments until you get a big mistake.
Right.
And what does that big mistake cause? Because we know that it can cause tetraquarks, it can cause the Higgs boson particle to appear. But one of the things that I've always said would be probably the most nominal is that you could actually explode the entire thing. What's the chances of the thing just exploding?
Well, there's definitely enough power there to have a major catastrophe. But one thing that I have thought of, the Bible speaks of something hitting the earth that's called wormwood. It's in the Revelation prophecy. And you know, we've had there have even been movies made called Deep Impact, or different movies about comets or asteroids colliding with the Earth. My thought has been, this thing has such a magnetic pull when they turn this thing on. If this thing can collapse our magnetosphere for a time period, and then we know that the moon and the different planets, they take a lot of impacts from space debris, from meteors and comets and stuff. And those impacts that they take is part of a system, I believe, that was designed by God to keep these things from impacting the Earth. The moon takes the impacts rather than the Earth. So what if they crank this thing up, and we've got such a magnetic field that we've created that instead of the moon taking the impact of some of these meteorites, that we pull them into our own atmosphere? What if we pull wormwood into the Earth one day? What if that is the reason why this wormwood prophecy thing hits the Earth? It's because we pull it in with something like this. Now, that's just a
Well,
thought I had.
if it creates giant magnetic fields, could that possibly, and I'm just throwing this out there, could that possibly attract a celestial body, like a meteorite, like an
Yeah,
asteroid?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. We could actually pull one into us that wouldn't have otherwise hit us if we would have left the systems that are in place alone and let them work the way God created them to work. Then it wouldn't have hit us. But now that we've created this thing, we could be attracting this stuff towards us.
Well, if I'm correct, the other planets in the solar system, like Saturn and Jupiter, their large mass pulls in a lot of dangerous, nefarious meteorites, comets, asteroids. That, at times the trajectory, because I'm a nerd, I look at stuff in NASA every now and then, but the trajectory would actually be right at Earth, but because of the large mass of the other two bodies of Saturn and Jupiter, it actually takes it off of its trajectory and then bends it or turns it in a different direction. But if we were to create enough of a magnetic field, to create enough of an attraction of force, you're saying that it could actually straighten out that broken arrow path of a celestial body and aim it straight back at us, right?
Correct. Yep, that's what I'm saying. And also these other planets have moons also that acts in the same way. A lot of us have looked at the moon through a telescope. There's all kinds of impact craters on the moon. So other planets' moons play a role in that too. And if we alter that system by creating a giant magnetic field, we could dodge all the moons and all the planets and pull something big straight into the Earth and have an impact here. And according to the Bible, that's going to happen one of these days. And now we don't know if this will cause that, but it's a possibility, I think.
My mind's going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Let me start with one thing. Teleportation's already happened in 2011 in Leipzig, Germany. They transported an inanimate object across a large laboratory from one side to the other. Brent, do you know about that one?
Yes, I've heard about that.
Okay. So that could have been an outgrowth of CERN, and they tried it in the regular environment. That would be my guess. The other thing that, and I'll go back, you mentioned Stargate. Stargate had a TV series that lasted 10 years. And it was really well done in many regards. And in the TV show, the enemy in the beginning were called the Galul, and they were an infestation parasite that would jump into someone's body and overwhelm their will. And I'll tell you how I take it with regard to this. If this is demonic at all, and it could channel evil spirits, I got to tell you, the Stargate TV series covered Stargates, is obvious. It covered perhaps demonic infestation through what I just described. What I'm wondering here is, could this be a channeling device to bring in demonic spirits that will jump into bodies or overwhelm them? People become demonically possessed in large numbers. What do you think?
I think that's a possibility. And I think these television programs are established and played on the air in order to condition us, to get us ready for for some of these things to become a reality. So like I said
Exactly.
at the beginning of this, this concept about CERN has been in existence for 70 years. If us, the common people, are just now discussing our concerns with it right now, how far have they advanced in 70 years? And, what do they already know that they have yet to condition us to accept? You know, there's,
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, we're pretty far behind this from 1952 to now. We're just now having concerns and airing it now and discussing this, but these people have had this in their mind for 70 years.
Well, I can
And
tell you why. Quantum physics, when Tesla's work was taken by the FBI and they had the Philadelphia experiment, all that stuff, Tesla was all about quantum physics.
mhm,
And then yet Einstein on top of it was singularity and so forth. What I think they did is that they bifurcated science. They kept physics, and this is what my father had told me. They kept physics on a three-dimensional level that they taught to people. And then there was the quantum physics they wanted to work on because they knew that's where the real power was. But
right,
they wanted to keep it from the general public. The thing they couldn't control is 10 to 15 years ago, regular scientists at universities began to discover they got the quark, and then that led to a whole different, gee, could we get into separate dimensions? And then people like Michio Kaku came along and wrote a book and said, I can mathematically prove there's at least 26 dimensions. And he talked about what the characteristics of each dimension would be.
right,
So the science kind of developed on his own, but originally the powers that be wanted to bifurcate science and keep the rest of us ignorant. And I think this is why CERN was part of this outgrowth of quantum physics. I'll give you an example too. This kind of goes to my point. When Tesla died in 1943 in his New York apartment, the FBI came and they seized all his notes. And here we are all these years later, and they still haven't released his notes.
right. And back then, people thought he was crazy, and there was no practical uses for the things that he was creating back then. But now we're using everything that he created. We're using cellular. We're using even he created radio. I think Marconi got the credit for it, but it was actually
Yeah.
Tesla that created it. And
TV,
microwave and
radar,
sonar,
sonar. Yeah,
radar.
exactly.
We're using all
Exactly.
of it.
You know what he did in 1899 on New Year's Eve? He was in Colorado Springs and he sent electricity wirelessly from
Right.
Colorado Springs to the Capitol Hill area in Denver, which is downtown Denver. And he lit up a couple of houses.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to cover that up.
Right.
And then he got into trouble with Westinghouse and the industrialists when he said, I can power people's homes for nothing.
Right.
Basically 0 point energy, I think we'd call it today. And Westinghouse and the rest of the industrialists says, oh, no, 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 no. We're going to put a meter on this and make money. And they ostracized him right into the Navy because he
Right.
had nowhere else to go. And that's where he did the radar, sonar, and all that stuff. And have you ever looked at the Philadelphia experiment? Does that relate to this kind of technology, do you think?
I think so. I've looked into it. I'm not real familiar with it, but I think all this is tied together. And this brings up a topic that I like to discuss and think about. It seems as if all throughout history, and we may have discussed this when we were talking about pyramids, but earlier on a different show. But it seems like all throughout history, even go back to the book of Genesis, there's this character that comes up in Genesis named Tubal Cain. Tubal Cain teaches people how to make stuff out of metal. It's a new technology. It seems like all throughout history, even up until now, that we have some kind of character or person that introduces new technology to us and it advances to a different state. And, Tesla, sometimes I think Elon Musk is the modern day Tesla. It seems as if they're just like during World War II, all of a sudden the Germans come up with all this technology that nobody else had. You know, just all throughout history, there's been somebody that's come up with new technologies, and it's bringing us to place I believe where technology is just going to completely destroy us. And it's been
AI.
gradually over time.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Um, my dad worked with captured German scientists, and he said they were hundreds of years ahead of us in
Right.
the late 1950s when he began that work. And he asked them independently, one by one, where did you get this? Aliens. He said, did you ever meet them? And they said, no, but our commanders did. My dad says, I'm not so sure. I think it was probably demonic.
Hmm.
And then I'll just speak to this real quickly here. And I've told Doug about this recently. I have a friend named Vance Davis who was in NATO, U.S. Army, NSA assigned. He wore all three hats, and they were tasked with trying to unveil advanced technology, but they were told to use a Ouija board to do it, and they wanted no part of this. So they deserted, and they became the Gulf Breeze 7. The Gulf Breeze 7 is totally misrepresented in the mainstream media. They ran basically for their lives. They were caught. This is H.W. Bush, late 80s. They put them in prison, but they knew when they went to trial they would have discovery. They had witnesses that supported them, and so they just cut them loose.
Hmm.
And they just said, no one will ever believe you. And I think they tried to channel this technology through the occult.
Right.
And then I met a guy named Bob Dean, who is the senior non-com at NATO, and Bob Dean confirmed Vance's story. He said, yes, we were looking at the occult to try to unlock a lot of Nazi technology, and that we feel that they used the occult to come to this. So my long explanation, sorry for this, but I wanted to come to this point.
Hmm.
Do you have an opinion on the occultic nature of CERN, the satanic link? I mean, what's your thought on this?
Well, going back on what you were just discussing about World War II, let me go back a little bit. Prior to that, and I'll have to look at my notes, I can't remember the name of this incident, but there was a Roswell type incident that happened in Germany prior to the rise of Hitler. And some people claim that that incident is what gave them the uh, the knowledge to come up with jet propulsion and rocketry and all the things that they come up with during that time period. And so it seems like it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It seems as there's a character or an entity that comes along somewhere and gives people this knowledge. Even Tesla, when asked where he got this, he would point to the sky up there. That's where they ask him where you get this information. He'd
More
say
of
up
that.
there. Okay, so back to your question. Um, are there aspects of this CERN project that where they're utilizing occult type practices in order to bring about um, some kind of new technology? Like I mentioned earlier, there's ritualistic dances that they perform. They built this on a sacred pagan god site. Then they have
Yeah.
another pagan god that's out in the courtyard there in front of this building. So I think that right there is a definite yes that tells us that they are um at least they're illustrating that there's other gods or um other entities that they're tapping into in order to produce whatever it is they're trying to produce with this machine. Um, you know, going back to World War II, Hitler was obsessed with talking to mediums or talking through mediums, communicating with uh, different entities through mediums, and going all over the world trying to collect artifacts that may give them some extra boost in power or whatever. You know,
Mhm.
so I think it's been going on all throughout history, and I think it's a great possibility that's going on now with CERN.
Yeah, I just wonder who's in control of CERN. I interviewed on my radio side today Stephen Ben Noon. Boy, is that guy just a encyclopedia of knowledge.
Hmm.
And I told him what we had talked about before, and Doug and I have had this discussion many times, that I believe there's two DNA on the planet. One was from fallen angels, and I think this is why the royal family, for example, intermarried with each other to preserve this. And
Hmm.
I think it was centered in old Europe with the Rothschilds, is my guess. Um, and he thought there was legitimacy to that. And I'm wondering, is CERN is in Europe? It strikes me odd that it's not in America. And then I'm wondering who really can, if there are two DNA, fallen angel DNA, human DNA, and the fallen angel DNA people want to destroy the other, and they're
Mhm.
working with Satan. I'm wondering if CERN could not be an instrument. I'm sorry, this is where my wild imagination goes, Brent.
Well, okay, Doug mentioned earlier, um, there was a collider in Texas at one time. There's one in China.
Yes,
There's
sir.
different places. And so I don't know what was the reasoning behind the Europeans coming up with their own organization, but it seems as if they experimented with this stuff in different countries, and at some point they all came together and decided they had put it in its current location. Um, I was going to mention this when we talked briefly about the possibility of weather modification. We also have a station that's like this. There's different stations around the world, but we call it HAARP, HAARP. It stands for High Altitude Aurora Research Project, and the one in North America is based in Alaska. And so this instrument is an antenna array that's spread out over a large area, and supposedly they can aim this antenna and shoot electricity, high amounts of electricity, just like CERN, except they aim it at different spots in the ionosphere, and they can heat up a spot in the ionosphere and create a bulge in it, and that can shift weather one direction or the other. Okay, so these things are all over in different places too. I don't know if they've centralized like CERN has, but this is where, this is a big conspiracy topic, is chemtrails. But chemtrails and HARP go together in that um a lot of times the chemical dispersant that they put in the air is made of aluminum oxide and different kind of metals, uh, and they spray these particulates in the air, and it makes the atmosphere more conductive for HARP to do what it does. And
Yeah, but also too, doesn't it serve Bill Gates' purpose of reflecting the sun?
yes, there's multi-purpose use for this stuff.
Okay.
Um, but I think these things are kin to each other. When I say these things, I'm talking about CERN, talking about HARP. They're things we probably shouldn't be messing with. And they're going to cause some serious problems one day if we keep on doing this, I believe.
So I have a conspiracy.
Okay.
Here's my little conspiracy. Before I get on that, I want to say this. The United States is not a member of CERN, but it's an observer state.
Mm-hmm.
So we can attend the meetings, but we can't cast votes. And so far, we've given $531 million to CERN. But the member states, there's 12 founding states, and that's
Okay.
Belgium, Denmark, France, West Germany, Greece, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, and Yugoslavia. And since 2014, there's been 21 other countries to include Israel, Poland, and Finland.
Mm-hmm.
But we, with all these other countries, we're not a part of CERN. So if we're not a part of CERN, if let's just say America gets knocked out of power, okay,
Mm-hmm.
cataclysm, World War III, whatever you want to say, whatever your conspiracy flavor is. If we can't control or have a say, because technically we are the world police and we more or less have a say of what goes on in the world currently, if we have no ability to stop what's going on in CERN, CERN could harness the power of the sun through the CME. If you and this is just what I've gathered so far. If you blanket the earth in a chemical
Mm-hmm.
that once electrons and protons and all that cool other stuff gets into the atmosphere, let's say CERN creates a big hole, and that's the only hole facing the CME at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And here comes the blast. Well, all this stuff is going to be reflecting off of the earth, hitting the ionosphere where they're going to be doing the cloud seeding, which is really just capturing the heat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you could really heat up the earth when, if you turn on HARP at the same time, you turn on CERN at the same time, you got hit by a giant CME. I mean, you got enough energy there to move the Earth, like physically move the Earth, change the axis. There's all different types of crazy stuff that I've been researching that a large CME event like a X-class 22 solar flare or larger could do.
Yeah,
I
even
mean,
polar shift.
you could honestly turn off the lights on um, every single piece of electricity around the world. It could be
Mhm.
like a blanketed EMP event
Right.
if the wrong cataclysm happens. That's a bit of a stretch, but from what I've been reading so far, is actually kind of a possibility.
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of possibilities that we open ourselves up to when we start messing with the natural um protecting elements that we have, like our magnetosphere and our different layers of our atmosphere. They're layers of protection that protect us from radiation, protect us from impacts, and when we start altering stuff like that, then we're just opening ourselves up to disaster, I believe. There's a number of possibilities, but certainly what you just discussed is one of them.
Boy, what an interesting thought.
Well, this is coming
That's
from
really an astute observation, Doug.
this is coming from science.howstuffworks.com, which is
Yeah, wow.
it's kind of sponsored by CERN, so it's like it helps deflect conspiracies from CERN. But what they're saying is, will the LHC destroy the world? The Large Hadron Collider will allow scientists to observe particle collisions at an energy level far higher than any previous experiment. Some people worry that such powerful reactions could cause serious trouble for the Earth. In fact, a few people are so concerned that they filed a lawsuit against CERN in an attempt to delay the LHC's activation. In 2008, former nuclear safety officer Walter Wagner and Louis Sancho spearheaded a lawsuit filed in Hawaii's U.S. District Court. They claim that the LHC could potentially destroy the world. Now, I would like to say that you can't just be the random crazy guy who says, "Oh, this is, it's bad because I think it's bad and I'm going to file a lawsuit and it's something that's not even in my country to try and have it stopped." I'm sure they had a lot of evidence backing up this type of lawsuit, but this is what it goes on to say. What is the basis for their concerns? Could the LHC create something that could end all life as we know it? One fear is that the LHC could produce black holes, Brent, as you said earlier.
Hmm.
Black holes are regions in which matter collapses into a point of infinite destiny. CERN scientists admit that the LHC could produce black holes, but they also say those black holes would be on a subatomic scale and would collapse almost instantly. That's what they think, anyways.
Hmm.
In contrast, the black holes astronomers study result from an entire star collapsing in on itself. So they say there's a big difference between the mass of a star and that of a proton. Another concern is that the LHC will produce an exotic and so far hypothetical material called strangelets. One possible trait of strangelets is particularly worrisome. Cosmologists theorize that strangelets could possess a powerful gravitational field that might allow them to convert the entire planet into a lifeless hulk. You
You
want to
know,
go further with that?
if Satan's in charge, that does make sense.
You
But
know,
the scientists just dismiss this stuff. Like, that'll never happen.
right. But we know that there's a push towards population control and things like that. We it's evident, we can see it. Um, and then you think about, okay, I don't know if you've ever studied any about, I'm sure you have, both of you have read about remote viewing, and in
A little bit. I know a little bit.
some of this remote viewing, they discuss something called a kill shot, and supposedly the kill shot is a CME that comes from the sun or from some other place, maybe from even farther out in the galaxy, something that hits the Earth that just completely wipes out our electrical grid. Well, in the state that we are now, 100 years ago, people could live without electricity pretty easy, but now we use it to do everything, and we've become dependent on it. A large percentage of the population would die without electricity on Earth today. So, you got to think of the possibility, if we did do something that altered our magnetic shields and allowed a kill shot to come in, this could be something that we would greatly reduce the population just by the fact that the electrical grid went down globally.
Before you get discounted by critics in the audience, let me say this. I trained in remote viewing for a while under Ed Dames.
Okay, yeah,
Ed
I was going to
Dames
mention,
was he
right,
was the one that popularized the idea of the kill shot on Art Bell's show.
right.
You know,
Well, one of the things that
I
you're
didn't
talking
know
about
that.
with a kill shot would come from something called a pulsar.
Mm-hmm.
And pulsars are rapidly rotating neutron stars that blast out pulses of radiation at regular intervals ranging from seconds to milliseconds. And then you also have things like quasars, magnetars, white dwarfs, and blazars. I used to know all this stuff back when I was smart. Now I've forgotten all of it.
You know, Dave, did you mentioned Stephen Bendanoon earlier, right?
yes, yes.
Okay. Isn't he the one that has discussed pretty extensively about the 5 waves of energy? And what Doug was talking about a blast of energy that's coming through our galaxy due to a pulsar that exploded long ago. Is he the same guy?
I think you're right. I think I've heard him talk about it years ago. My interaction with him, we do a roundtable on John Moore's RBN show on Tuesday mornings,
Mm-hmm.
and Jeffrey Nyquist, myself, Stephen Noon, and so we're pretty much locked into the geopolitical world.
Mm-hmm.
Although we did discuss the fallen angel Genesis 6 deal, I know he's talked about something like this, but it's not something I pursued with him here. So I kind of have to say, I think so, but I couldn't tell you much about it because it hasn't been a focus of our interaction.
I think he's been a guest on Paul Begley's show, and I think that's where I've seen him talk about that, if
Okay.
I'm not mistaken.
That makes a lot of sense that Paul would go there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the one of the biggest takeaways for CERN is that there appears to be positive scientific experiment that's going on there that could benefit mankind. And then there's obviously nefarious. It's nefarious when they're having dramatic scenes of occultic like human sacrifices. You got strange gods sitting out there. For all of us Christians, we would say that's probably not a good thing to put out there. There's so many things that makes you think what is really going on here. But you can go to CERN. You have to request online from their website, but you can actually go to CERN and do an entire tour of the site for
Right.
free,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
I think that would be one of those incredible things to walk through and to see, what mankind can build. But one of my questions is, where does it stop from there?
Right.
What else is it that we need to continue to find? Because once we find the ability to open up holes in space time,
Mm-hmm.
how do we know it doesn't stop from there? Like, with Elon Musk and a bunch of other world leaders, everything is about getting off world and going to a new planet, a new cluster of stars. All
Right.
this, cool scientific stuff that me as a kid I was super interested in. Who wouldn't be, right? But the dangers of that is, okay, let's say we don't open up a wormhole and it takes us to Mars faster. If
Mm-hmm.
you open up a wormhole to another dimension, or you open up a wormhole and I think from what this website from CERN is saying, that the ability most likely of having 11 different dimensions or more. Let's say we open up the wormhole, okay, and boom, now we're right into the dimension of where the gray aliens are that come and abduct people all the time, that our friend Timothy Alberino likes to talk about. Or whatever. You have no idea what is there once you pierce the veil. But if you entered a portal into hell, or the demonic portal, the Jacob's ladder, and what could come out of that? Because that's the thing that I worry about. The scientists say, we know we can create a portal and something's going to be there and something's going to come out of it. And we're going to send something through it. Are we prepared, Brent, at your estimation, for once they open the portal, for whatever it is that's coming out of it? Do you think the scientists there are prepared for it? I mean, look, I'm not saying it's going to be a six-legged monster coming through the portal, though I think that would be entertaining. That's a little ironic. But I don't know what it is that they think would come through that portal. Have you seen any more discussion on that?
Not since a couple of years, I guess, is when last time I've heard some serious talk about that. But you know, it's like opening up Pandora's box. I mean, once you open it up, you're
Right.
not going to close it and put things back. So I think what we're going to do is going to be irreversible if something like that were to happen. So that's why I'll say again, we're messing with things that we should not be messing with.
You know what this reminds me of? It's the year 1984, and who are you going to call Ghostbusters? Remember how they messed with the
Excuse
realm
me.
out there, and then all these entities came through on the same night? But fortunately,
Oh
we
yeah.
had Bill Murray to save the Earth. But I'm engaging in small hyperbole, but I'm kind of serious about this too. I agree with you. We could be calling into being physics effects that could be wipe out everything here. We could be calling in entities that would make our life a living hell,
Well,
where the
it's
spiritual
not
comes into the
satirical.
physical.
It's not satirical. Look at Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, true.
There is no ability of trying to open up anything from those dudes on that ranch who's just trying to observe everything. I kind of wonder, could what they're doing at the Large Hadron Collider affect what's happening at these ranches where we get these poltergeist like activities, where we get these supposed portals that are opening up with craft flying through it? Could we inadvertently be causing this every time we turn this machine on?
Yeah. Yeah, and not only that, even if we don't bring in ghosts or goblins or demonic entities, we could be pulling in disease and different things from let's say a comet that's passing by that has some kind of disease on it that we're not, we don't have any immunity to. We could pull something
Yeah.
like that through,
Well, what you're saying is not really too far fetched, because that's, I believe, called panspermia.
hmm
If let's say you have a planet, okay, and this planet has had a devastating asteroidal impact, and then you have the projections of what's going out into the atmosphere, and that is carrying biological life on it. All right, that's
right.
panspermia. Well, if this is the wrong kind of biological life that is very adverse to the, I keep want to say the United States, Jesus, but that's very adverse to the world, and we gravitationally bring this thing into us. Well, you can actually go and see how NASA has studied that there are bacterial and virological um, elements of stuff that's in space, that's within our stratosphere.
hmm
I mean, they got algae on the on some of the observatories that are up there. So this, it's very strange science, and I agree with you. I mean, you could potentially pull in a biological effect that we we're not ready for, because it's alien, and we have
Right.
no express views of how to actually contend with it. Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's prophesied in the Bible as an end time prophecy is disease and pestilence. So where's this going to come from? It's either going to be, maybe it's man made, maybe we're going to create it ourselves, or maybe we pull it in from another place. But that's that's a possibility, because being biblical based, I believe that's prophesied.
I think there's no hyperbole here. It's almost like a recreation of the Tower of Babel.
Yeah. I think
Yep.
it's very comparable to that. They were doing something back then. We don't have the full story of what happened there, but they crossed some boundaries with God, and that's why he shut it down. And um, the Bible tells us that any weapon formed against us will not prosper, and I don't think this thing will prosper in the end. It'll either self-destruct or, God will come back. Something.
Or
And it may not be this machine, but if we keep tampering with it and building new machines like this one, eventually we're going to cross some kind of boundary with God.
Well,
yeah,
what makes
and this could go ahead, Doug.
what makes me agree with you is that the old adage, if you build it, they will come. Whatever Babylon
Yeah.
or the Tower of Babel was, and the ability to communicate with fallen angels and other entities, if that is what this potentially could be, even though we may mean it for science based and not for nefarious reasons, but the more we march towards revelation, the more we march towards the end of the world biblically, this machine could actually be inadvertently built for the fallen angels, for their means, and then harnessed and used, because the fallen angels were technological creatures.
Mhm.
In my aspects, they were technological creatures. There's too much crazy stuff that's talked
Well,
about.
yeah, they came here to mine gold. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's one of the things they did.
I mean,
Um,
there's a lot of strange things there, and some people may beat us up in the comment section. Look, we're not
it's
saying
okay. That's all right.
ancient alien stuff. We're just saying like you can't not talk about the wheel within a wheel of Ezekiel and go, oh yeah, it's just a wheel within a wheel. We're just going to skip over that verse and not apply technology to it at all.
Yeah, and the
I think.
wheels, the
Go
wheels
ahead.
had creatures that rode on them, and everywhere the creatures thought, that's the way the wheels move. So not only do you have technology, but you've got different entities that are described in that book. It's Ezekiel chapter 1, I believe.
Yeah, boy, we're just messing with danger. And I wonder if this is not what was meant in Revelations when it said that no one would survive, all life would end on the earth if Jesus didn't return.
Right.
I think it's obviously one of the things. I
Yeah.
mean, that you don't build one of the largest technologically advanced instruments in history for nothing bad to be done with it. I mean, I know it has science-based applications, but everything has military-based applications.
Right.
Everything does.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, but I would say this, Doug. CERN might be neutral, kind of like a gun. A gun can be used to hunt for self-defense, but a gun can also be used as an instrument of oppression and violence.
Well, I mean,
So CERN could be the same way.
it says on their website that it is like neutral. There's 100 different countries that are involved in this. However, you mix in the satanic stuff and the occultism, and I throw neutrality out the window immediately.
I think there's people that's involved in the project that are strictly there for scientific purposes, but I think
I'd agree with that.
you've got probably some people in there that's involved with it with other things in mind also. I'll just put it that way.
Dave, with your dad's research and what he did, do you see CERN as a advancement in what they were doing?
Yeah, and I would say my dad would say it's along the lines of the occult, and I think Vance Davis's experience would kind of go to that point too. Yeah, I think so.
Well, Brent, do you have any more information on CERN?
I I think I think we've about covered all that I had in my notes. If we get a lot of questions about this in the comments, we may want to revisit this topic and study up a
Yeah,
little
we sure
more.
can.
Yeah, here, let me make that announcement. Look, in the comment section on here, if you have questions about CERN, we'll be able to hopefully answer anything that you're asking
Mhm.
for. If not, we'll be able to gain the information and talk to the other experts. We're not experts in this field, but we are interested in it because obviously the world has interest in this type of device. So let's pay attention to the technological advancements. That way we're not caught off guard. But if you do have questions in there, you want to email them to us, you can email them. But I would rather that you leave it in the comment section so that we can create, a good working theory of what we think is going on there. And, if you got any cool articles or anything that adds to this information of CERN, please put it in the comment section
Sure.
below, So
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. Brett Hite, again, you never disappoint. This was very intriguing. And I feel like we're kind of in the middle of a book,
Mhm.
but the rest of the book hasn't been written yet. I think there's more to be learned from this, but I want to thank you for coming on the commonsenseshow.tv.
Yeah, and
And on
I want to
behalf,
thank you for having me, and I always enjoy being on your show. So
listen, the privilege is ours. But for our guest, Brett Hite from Outdoors. Oh, by the way, tell people how they can follow you.
it's Brent Hite Outdoors. I started out doing all things outdoors because I spend a lot of time outdoors, but Doug and I formed a group with Mondo Gonzalez, the paleo
Yeah.
research group, and so we started researching some different things and we go and explore. and we document this, and I put some of this on my YouTube channel as well.
Very good.
Brent Hite Outdoors.
Brent Hite Outdoors. Well, it's been our pleasure having you on, as we said. And on behalf of my broadcast partner, Doug Thornton, I'm Dave Hodges, and we've had the privilege of speaking with Brent Hite. We want to thank all of you for joining us, and we want to wish you a great evening. And please come with your questions. We'll answer them as best we can. And if we can't, we'll have to do research and do another show. Thanks, gentlemen.
All right. Thanks.